What's going on, everybody? This is Chris Freeman, author, writer, and creator of the Sharpen Yours book series. Now, in this video right here, this is going to be the first of a series of videos about the Sharpen Yours book collection in totality, right? So basically, I'm going to break down each book, each story, one by one, and give the reader / viewer a strong idea of what the book is about, what inspired me to write the book, the message behind each book, and any other frequently asked questions that may come to mind or that people may want to know about. So with that being said, let's get things started with part one. Okay, so part one, a morning truck ride with Dad. Hey, man. Before we get started with this, all I'm going to say is the Sharpen Yours book series would not have progressed to what it is today without a morning truck ride with Dad. This is the foundation of my book series right here. I wrote this book back in 2019, about mid-2019. And I was actually writing a couple of different stories at the same time. But at a certain point, I decided to solely focus on this one for a couple of different reasons. As my first go around as a young author, a young writer, a young creative, just kind of getting his feet wet within the writing realm, my aim was to produce a short story that was short, sweet, meaningful, all together in one, and I feel like I accomplished that. For a book that's 32 pages short, I think I definitely accomplished that. And like I said before, man, this book right here kind of sets the tone for the rest of the series in terms of, the messages behind each book, the personalities within each character. But before we go off on a tangent on that kind of stuff, I want to read the synopsis on the back just to kind of give the viewers who have never read the story before a strong idea of what the story is about. So part one, it says, welcome to the first installation of the Sharpen Yours book series. It's the beginning of the summer for 13-year-old Nate, and he's welcomed into it by his father with a morning conversation about goals and responsibility. Read along and share the experience of a cruise around the small town of Round Pop and a meaningful discussion between a father and a son. So there you have it. That's pretty much the gist of this short story. A father takes his son out for a morning conversation, or a morning truck ride rather, to have a meaningful conversation around the small town of Round Pop, which is a fictional town located in the Lone Star State of Texas. But why, one might ask? Why a truck ride in the morning, randomly? Well, for starters, this isn't something random. I created, or I made the character Roland out to be a dedicated father. So for him to wake young Nate up early in the morning before the sun even rises, this isn't nothing that's brand new to young Nate. These two characters have a strong relationship as a father, son, or even as a parent and child. You know what I mean? So again, why? Well, aside from Roland being a dedicated father, it's the beginning of the summer. And young Nate, he's a good kid. He's a good kid. He's into sports. He has friends. He's a good student. And Roland just kind of wants to keep young Nate on a steady path as he progresses as a young boy becoming. So that's basically Roland's intent, or his aim rather. Not to mention that in the author's humble opinion, the ages between 12, 13, and 14 Those are crucial years. That's kind of the time where a kid has to pick a lane in a sense. If he or she is into sports, then studies and athletics should be their main focus. If the kid is an intellect, then they should always be trying to learn something new or sharpen the mind or etc. So on and so forth. So again, I created Roland to be a dedicated father, and he's aware of things like this. Like, okay, let me pick his brain a little bit. It's the beginning of the summer. Like, how are things going to look for you at the end of the summer? You know what I mean? So, and that's where the goals come into play. Roland gives plenty to consider over the summer, and he even sparks a little motivation inside of him too. Now, there is no conflict in this story, and that was done intentionally. But don't worry, things ramp up real quick in part 2. Trust me. I had a lot of fun with that one, but that's not the subject matter on this video. We're sticking to a morning truck ride with Dad. But with that being said, though, we're going to move on to the final segment of this video, and that's going to be the frequently asked questions or questions that people may be curious about. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first question that I get asked a lot, well, not a lot, but people are curious, is what was the inspiration behind me writing A Morning Truck Ride with Dad? Chris, you're not even a dad. Like, why did you write A Morning Truck Ride with Dad? You know what I mean? And my response to that is, humbly speaking, I don't think people need a full-blown experience on some things in order to get a general sense or an idea of what the dynamics should look like. At the end of the day, when it comes to a parent and a child, father, son, mother, daughter, and everything else in between, it's all subjective. My inspiration behind writing this story was I wanted to shine light on a strong relationship between the father and the son. I wanted to play a part in cleaning up the image of, deadbeat fathers, you know what I mean? Because just like your good cops get kind of misunderstood or misinterpreted as the bad cops, it's the same thing with really anything. Anything could be misunderstood if you really think about it. But that was the inspiration. And well, part of it. The other part was my own personal experience. I've had many truck ride experiences. And what I mean by experiences is, take the title, for instance, A Morning Truck Ride with Dad. Now, it's not necessarily the truck ride itself. It's what the truck ride represents. The truck ride is just like a metaphor for the relationship or the bond, the closeness between a father and a son or a parent and a child, So as a young writer, I just wanted to shine light on that and put it in a good light at that, That's why there's no conflict in part 1. It's a tone setter. It's the foundation, like I said before. So yeah, that's the motivation behind it. That was the inspiration. Now, another question that I get asked a lot is, what made you want to start writing? And for anybody who knows me personally to some degree, this is a good question for them, because as a former athlete, I didn't see this coming. Just being transparent, I never thought that I would be the one to write books. I didn't, but here I am, loving it too. I love it. I love creating. And that's the core of it, man. When I discovered my passion for creation, for creating things, I took it and ran with it, man. And it started with narration. I was working at a retail store back in 2018, 2019. And, I would always get compliments on my voice. And people would always mistake me for someone who does radio work or who's a narrator, who narrates books and things of that nature. So I would hear that often, you know what I mean, from like random strangers. And it kind of just was, you know, subconsciously planting seeds, like, and it gave me something to think about. And the more I thought about it, the more it intrigued me. I was like, you know what, you know, I could do something with this voice now, you know what I mean? And so that's how it began. And, you know, and I started looking up, I got online and I started looking up different books that were looking for a narrator, someone to voice their book, bring it to life. And it eventually got to the point to where, why don't I just write my own book, you know? And that was like one of those light bulb moments. I just really just took it and ran with it, and never looked back since, you know. Before I even started writing this book, I was writing another story. And then, but I ultimately decided that I wanted to take my extreme time with this story in particular and come back to it, because I knew I didn't want that to be my number one, my first book coming out, because that was a level I wasn't ready for. I knew that I needed to start small, in a sense, in a strong sense, you know. You know, when it comes to creation, when it comes to putting your work out there, me in particular, I'm particular about my work. You know, I'm particular about what I put out to the world, you know. And so that's why this story in particular, I keep saying that word, but that's why this story has such a strong meaning to it, you know, as far as like morals go, you know what I mean? But yeah, it started with narration. It started with narrating, and I narrated my first book back in 2019, and the book was called Develop Your MVP by Derek Warford. Really good book, very good book. I had a lot of fun reading that book, narrating it, giving it life. But yeah, those two experiences right there, like, you know, that definitely let me know, or it led me into something that was more purposeful. You know, I was in a weird space at that time. I had just finished playing pro ball, and you know, I kind of was looking for something that would compensate that kind of creative itch. You know what I mean? Because even with hoops, you know, you're somewhat like an artist too. You know, when you have that basketball in your hands, you know, you can dictate your outcome, your reality. You have well, the more skilled you are as a player, the better chances you have at dictating and creating what it is that you're trying to do, you know, which is ultimately to score the basketball, right? Outscore your opponent. So I just took that same approach and I applied it to writing, man. And like I said at the beginning, the idea of creating, you know, giving these characters large personalities, it intrigued me. And I saw no limits. You know what I mean? My imagination was and has been able to stretch, you know, longer than my 7-foot wingspan. You know what I mean? And it's been fun. I love creating. I can see myself doing this all throughout my life. But that pretty much does it for this video, man. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. I appreciate you all for tuning in this long. Y'all some real ones for that. Nah, but seriously though, be on the lookout and stay tuned for the next video as we do a book review on part 2, which is Trouble on Thursday. Oh yeah, trouble. What is the trouble? What happened on Thursday? Well, you're gonna find out. Nah, I'm just playing. All jokes aside, this was a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk about this book. This is where we really ramp things up and crank it up a few gears. But until then, peace, love, and abundance. Thank y'all.